Hello everybody, how are you doing today? Today we're going to talk about making the basics of a third-person game using Unreal Engine version 4.15. So this tutorial is for the very basics of a third-person game. And by the end of this tutorial, you should have something along the lines of this. You'll have a character and he can move and jump. All the fun stuff. So let's get started, no? So in order to get started, of course, you need Unreal Engine. And to do that, you can go to unrealengine.com, hit that download button. But one thing to note here is that you will have to make an account. It doesn't take that long, so you won't have to wait very long for you to start making your very own games. And another thing to note here is, before we get started in this tutorial, you will need to download this third-person fbx.zip folder, which you can get at wiki.unrealengine.com/file :third-person_fbx.zip. I'll put a link in the description for you to download, but this will contain all of our assets, including animation, skeleton for us to work with in our tutorial. And once you have it and unzip it, it should look a little something like this. Once you've downloaded the Epic Games Launcher and installed the Unreal Engine, we can open it, and this is what you should have. There's a community tab where you can learn about other people's projects and what's going on in the community. They also have a bunch of handy tutorials if you choose to continue working with Unreal Engine. And there's also a marketplace if you don't want to start from scratch. You don't want to create your own model from scratch. You can just buy one here, or you want different textures, or maybe some level somebody created. Use it for your own game. You can find that here. You can buy it here and use it for your own game. So let's launch Unreal Engine. Here we have two different tabs. We have the Projects tab and we have New Project. Projects is where all your current projects are. Everything that you've worked on should appear on here. Everything that's on your computer should be here. So we go to the New Project tab. In the New Project, we have two options. We can make a Blueprint project or a C++ project. For the purposes of this tutorial, we'll just be using Blueprint. So if you don't have a whole lot of programming experience, you don't need to worry about knowing C++. But one thing to note here is that most complete projects will use both Blueprint and C++. Picking one over the other just determines your starting point in the project. But of course, for this tutorial, we're going to keep things a little simple. So to start our project, we're going to start off with a blank Blueprint project, and we're going to name it Third Person Tutorial. Also, make sure you have no spaces in your name, or else Unreal Engine will not let you create a project. Here we are. This is the Unreal Engine editor. Here we have our viewport. Here we have a whole lot of different assets we can bring in. Here are our current assets in the game world. And down here is our content. This is where we can import things and drag them onto to add them to the game world. So Unreal Engine starts you off with this table and two chairs. It's nice. But if we want to look around, we can do that by pressing the right mouse button and just dragging it. If you want to move around, you can use the WASD keys, and you can look around. There's nothing much right now, but hopefully we can change that. We'll be adding our character here eventually. All right. So first, let's get a little organized. Right-click on the content browser, blank space in the content browser. Create a new folder, and let's call this character or characters, if you plan on continuing with this. All right, in our characters folder, it's empty. It's in a brand new folder. So what we want to do is get the mannequin file from our FBX assets that we downloaded, and just drag it. You should be able to just drag and drop into the Unreal editor. And you're confronted with this dialog box. Right now, we're not really going to worry about changing any of these. So just go ahead and click Import All, or Import. There's only one. You'll get this message, but don't worry about it. Your computer's not freaking out or anything. You're fine. Just ignore it. All right, so we have our mannequin, and as you can see, we have three different components here. One is the mannequin. This is our skeletal mesh, which in layman's terms can be described as skin. And here we have our skeleton. And skeletons are very important because they can cut down a lot of the work for you. Skeletons are essentially how we share animations in Unreal. You can animate a skeleton and you can change the skeletal mesh. And what's cool about a skeleton is we can add limbs, we can add, let's say, a ponytail or a sword or anything like that. However, as long as we're not adding any more joints. If we add more joints in between already existing joints, the animations won't carry over, they won't work. So we have our characters. Let's import some more stuff. Let's over here, right click on the content folder, create new folder, and let's call this animations. And what we're going to import to animations is everything except for the mannequin. So to unselect, you can select everything with shift, select the first one, the last one, hold shift, and to unselect the mannequin, just hold control and click on mannequin. Now we have everything else selected. We can just drag that onto the to the Unreal editor as we did before. There we go. All right, here we are going to do something a little different. When importing the animations, we do need to attach it to a skeleton, and that was in our characters that we imported just now. So we select SK mannequin skeleton under skeleton here. And then we can go ahead and import all. And don't mind this message. The skeleton used to have a coat, and the coat is not in our model anymore, so this will pop up. But don't worry, it's not a problem. Because like I said, with the skeleton, you can add extraneous limbs, and it shouldn't affect the animation. All right, so now we have our characters and animation. Now, if we want to take a closer look at the animations, we can do that by opening Persona, and to open Persona, we just take an animation, double click on it. And it should open this window, which you can drag onto the other one if you don't want a separate window. But here we have our idle animation. You can see it just loops and loops, and there's our character that we attach the animation to. There's many things to look at in this window. Here's our asset browser. Here's where all the different animations that we imported are. So if you want to just open one, you can just double click it. You should do it. There's the walking. Here's our running animation. Here's our jump. Here's our ending of the jump. And back to idle. Well, we can exit that. So one of the first things that we're going to do in order to create this third-person game is set up our inputs. So to do that, we can go Edit, Project Settings, and you should see this pop up. So here we can look at a lot of different things we can change around for our project, but right now we're just gonna focus on input. And this is where we're gonna set our controls. Whether it's mouse and keyboard or controller. This is where the magic is set up. We'll come back to this later. This isn't the only thing that we'll do with input, and you'll see why. So under engine, we can go to input, and we want to add axis mappings and action mappings. We'll start with axis mapping since that takes the most amount of time. So to add axis mappings, we press on this little plus sign here. We can extend that. Here we're gonna name this. We can make this. We can name this move forward. And here we can select W, because that's what we'll be using that to move forward. And you want to leave the scale as 1. And if we want to make it work with a gamepad, we can find gamepad, and you should normally, to move in a third-person game, you use the left thumbstick, so we can do left thumbstick y-axis, leave the scale at 1. And now move forward will move us forward and backwards. So we want to have S. So we find keyboard S. And in order to walk backwards, to use this as forward and backwards, we can change the scale to -1. We can call, so then we create a new axis mapping called move right. And to move right, we normally use D, so we find D. Keyboard letter D. We can add one more. We could find keyboard letter A. Yeah, this will be used for our strafe. And of course, before I forget, this needs to be a -1. And of course, to make this work with the controller, we can add one more. Find gamepad left, but instead of the y-axis, we'll do the x-axis. And this will move us left and right. So we have forward, move right, and these will move us up, down, left, right. So now we need to add our camera controls, and this is relatively simple. To do this, we can name this, we can just name this turn right. We can look up mouse X, and we can make another one called look up. Set that to mouse Y. Cool. So now that we have our axis mappings, we can create our action mappings. And action mappings are like, if you want to jump, like the spacebar. So we can call this jump for simplicity's sake. Bring down this dialog box. Look up spacebar. So if you notice here, there's a couple blank boxes, and these are for if you want to, let's say if you only want the person to be able to jump, the player to be able to jump if they're holding Shift, Control, Alt, or Command, and then press the spacebar, then you would check one of these. But we're not gonna mess with these because we don't want the player to hold any of these before they can jump. And let's just set that up for the controller really quick. And normally we jump with the A button or the X if you play on PlayStation. But it's the bottom button. So we look for gamepad, face button bottom, and that should set up our jump with the controller. One thing to note here is that we can exit now, and all these settings are saved automatically. They're saved to default input.ini, which you can go in and you can export and import if you have different configuration files or one that you already created before that you want to transfer to this project. But there's no save button or anything. You can just exit, and all our changes will be saved automatically. But next, we need to talk about blend space. And blend space is, in simple terms, it's a way to blend between multiple looping animations based on a property value. So, for example, speed. Speed is the property value. If speed is at 0, the idle animation is playing. But as the speed increases, he starts walking. And if it increases more, he starts running. And that is the basic idea of a blend space, is that as the speed increases, the animations transition from one to the other. In order to do that, we can go to our animations folder, right click, go to animation, and select blend space. However, okay, so there's two different kind of blend spaces here. There's blend space and there's blend space one dimension. We're going to be working with the one dimensional blend space. The two dimensional blend space is used for if you want multiple things to affect what triggers an animation. For example, like how we were talking about speed, if you want speed and direction to affect what animation plays next, we would use a two-dimensional blend space. But for now, we're just going to keep things simple. So of course, we need to pick a skeleton when creating a blend space, and we're going to pick the only one that we have right now. And we can name this idle, walk, run. Since these are the three animations that we'll be blending, that we'll create a blend space for. So we can double click on it, and it'll open up Persona. And there's skeleton mesh and animation tabs, and you can switch between the three. But we're going to be working in animation for this blend space. Down here, if you notice, this is our timeline. This will show us the animation at different speeds. Or when we create our speed parameter, this will show us how it's blended together and how it looks. To get started to create our speed parameter, we can go to axis settings. Let's name this speed so that we know that we're talking about speed. And having played around with these animations, the fastest he should be able to run is 375, and so it looks relatively nice. You can pick any value, but some will look better at a certain speed. And if you notice, what's cool about this is that our graph here updates automatically. So we have a minimum axis value of 0, our maximum axis value, which we changed to 375, and we know that it's, we're talking about speed. And creating the blend space becomes, thanks to Unreal Engine's tools, it becomes relatively simple. We can let's start with our idle. And idle is, we're not moving at all, so our speed is 0. We can just go to the asset browser, click, drag, and drop it on there on 0. And now, as speed increases, we want to start walking. So we can click, drag from the asset browser, our walking animation, and maybe let's drop it on the first tick. So now what we have so far, if you press shift and left click on this little green dot, you can change the value of speed. So here we're at 0, he's not moving, he's idling, and we can slowly bring it up and he'll start walking. Pretty nifty. But we're not done yet, he gets faster and faster. We want him to start running. So maybe let's move that maybe around the third mark here. And we can drag it, we can check how he's gonna run. And the faster he goes, the faster he'll run, and the slower he'll start walking until he's idling. Alright, and that creates our blend space. Once we have our blend space, don't forget to save. Always remember to save constantly in Unreal. It sucks to lose your work if something goes wrong. Well, we can exit that now. Here's our idle, walk, run blend space. And now we're going to bring our animations together. So we can right click